You don't need any added substances. You don't need alcohol.
Everything.
12, 15, 17, 18-year-olds who are engaged in drug activity, they are messing with the neurotransmitters of their brain.
Like this compelling energy, like I wanted to make a change.
If grades are failing,
Yeah.
Wow.
activities, going to Disneyland is such a bore to be the gateway drug, which means we try marijuana first and then we move into ecstasy, and coke, and crack, and
Next
heroin.
program of the Division of Community Engagement.
We're having epiphanies on your show.
This is why it's fatal and it's a big deal. We're talking hepatitis B, which is inflammation of the liver. We're talking toxins from alcohol because marijuana has been proven through research to be the gateway drug, which means we try marijuana first and then we move into ecstasy and coke and crack and heroin, etc. And it's all recreational and seemingly there's nothing wrong with it. This, of course, promotes an entry for AIDS, which gets into complications with pregnancy for women who actually get pregnant, and there's a higher percentage of women, teenagers, who will get pregnant because they are in a drug or a drug stupor. Accidents related to drug use amongst teens, negative effects for employment, school achievement, socioeconomic status, family stability, crime, violence, etc. It goes on, and it all starts with this idea of just having a good time.
Let's talk about some of the developmental implications. I mean, young people have bodies that are growing. A 12-year-old's body is not the same as a 42-year-old's body.
Absolutely.
So when you start using drugs and alcohol at an early age, what impact does that have on your physical development?
It has a great deal of impact on the physical development. There's something in the brain called prefrontal cortex. We all have it. And this is very interesting. At the moment of inception, there is hormones that are released, which is what creates the embryo. We don't see that again. Research shows this. We saw it through the MRI. We don't see that again, that hormonal bust, until around 12 years old. This is why, for grandparents out there who are listening and parents who are listening, you're thinking, my kid turned 12, my grandkid turned 12, and all of a sudden they woke up and somebody else had possessed their body. And if you think they're on drugs, there's a hormonal release that is already happening. When you combine that with drugs in a brain that is still growing, the prefrontal cortex is not fully grown yet. It doesn't fully grow until you're about 25 years old. So children, 12, 15, 17, 18-year-olds who are engaged in drug activity, they are messing with the neurotransmitters of their brain. This is affecting your cognitive development, your ability to think, your ability to plan, to have good judgment. All of that flies out the window. That flies out the window just because you're an adolescent. It's exacerbated when you're using. And this is what we're seeing. And it's very dangerous. It's dangerous.
So we want to give those grandparents and those parents a chance to call in and share some of their thoughts and experiences, particularly if they are raising a young person who may or may not be exhibiting signs of substance use. I'm going to give you, let's zero in, Dr. Crenshaw, and talk specifically about folk in our community, African American youth. Is it true or not true that African Americans are disproportionately impacted by substance use?
Charles, yes and no. There is a myth out there that there is a disproportionate amount of African American teens as opposed to their white counterparts who are engaged in drug activity. All right? That is not true. We find that there is a 7.7% more of whites who are using illicit drugs, and there's a 3.5% increase between 2000 and 2012 of black people. The problem is that there is 43% of 12 to 17-year-old black females who are now engaged in marijuana usage.
Say that again?
There are 43% as of 2011, and this is coming from the National Drug Control Policy. Since 2011, increase is up 43% for African American girls. We're talking your 6th grade, 7th grade granddaughter, niece. 39% for Hispanic Males, that is. The point is that it is an issue, and we need to get to the far-reaching reasons as to why we find that our girls are doing this, and boys.
It's a question that the answer that you gave raises another question, which I want to get to in a second. We do have a call, and we're going to take that call first. But the question, I'll put it up there now. If we're not, as a people, disproportionately using and drinking more, why is it then when we look at arrest rates? When you look inside the jails, you see us there disproportionately. We'll talk about that in just a second.
Yes.
But we have a caller on the line. Are you there, caller? Hi. Did you have a question or a comment?
Great question, caller. Look into their eyes, look at their schoolwork, look at their homework, look at their friend associations. How much are they texting? Are they on the phone? First of all, your 12-year-old should have an extremely monitored cell phone, if one at all. If grades are failing, poor relations, suddenly they are withdrawn from you, from family activities. They're no longer interested in what they used to be interested in. Church has lost its meaning, if you're into church. Peer groups have lost their meaning. The activities, going to Disneyland is such a bore. You need to be looking at what's going on with your kid. We don't pay enough attention to our children. Does that make sense?
So let's look at that question of incarceration.
Mm.
The point you were making earlier is that despite myths,
Mm-hmm.
black youth are not using at rates disproportionately higher than other ethnicities. And yet when you look at the criminal justice system and you look at drug-related arrest, you see us represented disproportionately.
It's true. We're represented disproportionately when it comes to drug arrests. We're represented disproportionately when it comes to health-related issues concerning drug abuse. Part of it is because you're looking at a culture of poverty where there's a lower socioeconomic status. You're not making enough money, you're depressed, you're doing drugs, you don't have the wherewithal or the means to hide it and how to get a good lawyer. This is basic stuff. You get a public defender. Racism is an issue. It's changed a bit now because of our new administration, but we all know what the facts and figures were when it comes to cocaine-related arrests and crack cocaine-related arrests.
Let's talk about those differences between powder and crack cocaine.
Well, first of all, you understand that crack goes into the system faster, and this is all that they were using inside of the court to say that this is why this is more severe, because it goes into the system faster and therefore creates a greater problem, and the high is faster. It's short-lived, but theoretically it makes you more violent, it makes you more agitated, more excited, etc. Cocaine, because of the powder and because of the 90210 address that it's always been attached to, creates, it's a disease. They need help. Let's get them into a rehab center. If it's at Nicolette and Cocoa, if it's P Stone for Life, right? If it's Imperial and 126th, then this is a cancer that needs to be excised from our community. These black people are running around like banshees, and we need to put them away for a very long time. They're endangering their babies, and the birth rates, etc., and it goes on and on and on. It's racism at its best. Now, I do want to say this. African Americans who use alcohol and drugs experience higher rates of drug-related health problems than do users of other ethnic groups. Another reason is drug abuse is among a variety of long-standing factors believed to cause criminal behavior in the African American community. It's not that it doesn't cause criminal behavior at 90210 Bel Air Westwood, Santa Monica. It's just that the society absorbs it. Our judicial system absorbs it differently. And crime in a black neighborhood with black people attached to it creates the boogeyman effect. So we can say we're afraid of these people. We're afraid of their drugs.
Sort of bring it back to the health implications. Why is this problem so hard to solve? Are there characteristics that are unique to young people, that make it harder to solve substance abuse problems in this demographic than in older groups?
Can we dispel another myth?
Mhm.
The problem of substance abuse is a human problem. It is not an African American problem. It is not a white problem. It is not a higher SES or lower SES. In fact, if it were, then there'd be no rich middle class people addicted to drugs. It's very simple. But isn't it interesting how the world responds to a Nicole Richie, to a Hilton, a Lindsay Lohan? My goodness, we just can't get enough of her. The poor girl, poor little rich girl.
Mhm.
You know, and on the flip side of that, when we're looking inside of a culture, what we think is a culture of poverty, because we don't have the support system, seemingly the family infrastructure isn't there. I say seemingly because that is not always true. Just because you live in a project doesn't mean that you don't have James Evans as your father and Florida Evans as your mother,
There you
right?
Right.
And so what we have to do is we have to take the ownership. Black people, we have to go back to the basics. Go grab our children. That's my child out there in the street, walking the streets. I must be concerned about it. I didn't birth the kid, but I must be equally concerned. It is a disease, much like we see in humanity. This is a human being that has they've lost their way, and we need to pull them back in before they become another one of the statistic and raise that 43% to 53%.
It's a fascinating discussion, and we're going to bring in someone who's actually had experience using drugs and alcohol as a young person and hear her story in just a moment. But we're going to take another musical break, and when we come back, we'll hear from Shy Everidge. Please stay tuned. Good. Good.
It's going very well.
Yeah, you're covering.
I'm trying to find the.
You're covering
You're balancing
Yes.
like
Is it okay?
cultural references and great points with statistics, and the mix
Right,
was great.
great sense of that.
Okay, two things. First, a lady just called. She wanted to talk to you on the phone, on the air, but all she was going to ask you was for your phone number. So, no, she said she wants to talk to you about, but she didn't want to go on air.
Oh,
with you.
I see.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah,
I
they
didn't,
do.
that's why I didn't pass that call.
Okay.
And then the other call was, and it was right when we were doing the musical break, and you had said you were going to talk about the link between incarceration and marijuana. So he wants to know, is there a specific link between marijuana use and people in jail? And like that. So that was that one. Is
I'm not
everything
sure I
else okay?
understand, but
Yeah, I told him to
You
call
know
back,
what?
but I feel like it
How
was
does
addressed.
marijuana lead you to that role, or does it not?
So-
That's what he's asking.
Because I said it's the gateway drug.
Yeah, yeah.
So she wants to explain that more.
Maybe yes. Now, but I told him that if you guys didn't address it,
welcome back to the Good News Radio Magazine. On this afternoon's program, we're talking about youth and addictions now, who actually is going to talk to us about this critical issue from a personal perspective. And I want to introduce again our second guest.
Gone all those days of my miserable life. Gone all those days when I just could not get it right. How sad those days of my miserable life. But a life changer